Hi, I'm Esther.
And I'm Sean.
I write about AI news here at TechTarget in Massachusetts.
And I edit Esther's stories.
We're here to talk with tech experts about everything AI and ChatGPT.
Don't forget Google Gemini.
Whether it's who's ahead in the generative AI race, the metaverse, digital twins, or even the latest in autonomous vehicles, we've got it covered. Right, Sean?
Yep, we've got it covered. Hi, welcome to another episode of the Targeting AI podcast from TechTarget Editorial. I'm Sean Suttner, Senior News Director at TechTarget, overseeing AI coverage, among other topics. My great co-host, Esther Ajao, can't be here today, so I'm doing this interview solo. So my guest today, our guests today, are Charles Ferland, Vice President and General Manager of Edge Computing at Lenovo, and Tom Butler, Executive Director of Worldwide Commercial Portfolio and Product Management at Lenovo. So, welcome, Tom and Charles. I'm really happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. We're really happy to be here.
All right.
Thank
So,
you.
I guess a lot of people are familiar with Lenovo as a provider of PCs and desktops, out in the world. So, how does AI intersect in that area, and what is Lenovo doing with AI technology, in conjunction with your PCs and desktops?
Yeah, so I'll take that one. This is Tom Butler. And I run the commercial notebook business for Lenovo globally. I think my title is probably a little more complex, but when we look at this, we really are looking at it from end to end as a continuum. And Charles and I both represent a broad representation of Lenovo's portfolio, but we've been watching and working and completing AI projects in the cloud, in the data center for many years. And what we're seeing is I look across that continuum from data center to the edge devices, edge meaning notebooks, desktops, mobile phones. For many years, we've talked about Lenovo's broad breadth of coverage of the portfolio from cloud to pocket or pocket to the cloud. So what we're seeing with AI now is AI is been sitting in the cloud. The big seminal moment was ChatGPT coming out, being available publicly. All of us, in general terms, could then go and put a query in and run a generative AI uh, prompt into the cloud and get a result back. That's now moving out to the edge. So this next wave of devices has the capability of running generative AI workloads on your laptop, on your desktop, out onto your mobile phone. And so that's really the big change, but it's that end-to-end coverage. And I think part of what we'll discuss today, a lot of what we'll discuss today, is sort of that impacts these things bring across Charles's portfolio and then the notebook desktop portfolio.
Okay, just a quick follow-up on that. Thank you for that. I've always been curious about what is the benefit both to the user, the end user, and to let's say the Gen AI provider for being able to run some of this processing on the edge devices.
Yeah, totally.
Seems to work okay now. Like if I have ChatGPT or Google Gemini on my phone, I can still get responses on my phone by just querying, and it goes up to the cloud and comes back.
Yeah. So when you talk about AI, and especially as you talk about AI in the context of a business, a business customer or enterprise class customer, it's a lot of this has to do with security, privacy, and then of course the benefit, the latency. So you running these workloads at edge on device. I'm not taking potentially proprietary IP and then pushing that up into cloud, and certainly not public cloud. We have a lot of our business customers are standing up private cloud instances on-prem or on a campus or within the firewall of a corporate environment. But there's still this challenge of running these workloads up into a data center that may spin up higher level of compute and consume more power energy, and then you got the latency coming back down to device. So the ability to carry that around with you to run these workloads local is one of the big benefits. But there's also the personalization benefit. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through this. But to have the device know you, respond for you on behalf of you, and act as really an adjacent persona with you is incredibly powerful as we go forward in time.
That is really cool. And just one more quick follow up. I mean, I am aware of the compute issue, and I see how it's important for enterprises to save compute power. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely.
This approach,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, because that's a huge cost
Right,
factor.
because not everyone is needing to run generative AI workloads all the time. So if you think about, like, just take the three of us here on a given day, we may have, each of us may have individual queries we would want to run, but if we're able to run more of those local, then I'm not having to have resources in a data center sitting there potentially idle if just the three of us are not hitting this all the time.
Okay, well, thanks. One more question about AI and Gen AI, and then I think I'll get to edge computing, edge AI. So, has your AI strategy like fundamentally shifted from traditional AI to Gen AI, along with as all the other vendors has pretty much morphed over the last year and a half
No,
into
yeah,
that?
100%. I mean, and again, it gets back to part of it is the availability of the compute, the engines that are now becoming available into device, and part of it is the software capabilities that are coming out. Certainly the generative AI workloads that can be run historically in cloud that are now being able to port or starting to port into local device. But it really starts if I take a step back and just talk about AI PC in general, that generally is defined today as the introduction of a third engine on device. So for decades we've had CPU, GPU, but now we've got this third engine NPU, neural processing unit, which is really specifically designed to run continuous workloads at a low power state. So if we are, like, we're on this call right now, on a video call podcast, but we're looking at each other, but being able to run and render some of the background elements at a lower power state is less taxing on the device, uses less power overall. So if you have a fleet of devices and you're plugging in, but you're using these at a lower power state, that's a massive benefit when you think about just the power utilization. And then of course the battery life improvements you gain with these. So this third engine has triggered the start of AI PC, and it's only going to continue to go and grow in a stronger fashion. And I'll layer on top of this, Sean. The other thing that's happening is the software companies are now analyzing their code and looking at what of these three engines makes the most sense. So when their code is asking for or starting a routine, does it make more sense to run this against a CPU, a GPU, or now this new engine, this NPU? And so they're starting to optimize their code base to really call upon these three engines in concert as we go forward in time.
I do want to talk a little bit more about the NPU later.
Yep.
Okay, so in covering AI and Gen AI, we've been noticing this shift toward AI on the edge, at the
Yes.
edge. So edge devices. So are you driving this shift? Are you managing this shift? And how does edge AI for Lenovo differ from AI PCs and
Yeah.
AI, laptops and phones?
So, Sean, good question. I'll take this one, Tom, and this is Charles. Basically, I'll start with a definition of what we consider edge computing. First of all, right? It's probably these. It's a device that offers similar performance that you will find in a data center, but in a much smaller, much more compact, much more secure and quiet form factor that is deployed closer to where the data is actually generated. And typically is without a mouse and keyboard, right? So it's not a desktop or PC or laptop. It's really a computing capability that you would find in the data center, but is now able to process a vast amount of data in a small form factor, quiet, secure, and all that. So that is extremely important because what we're noticing is while there's a lot of spend on the learning model, the LLM in the data center, now that these models have been trained to recognize a banana and a cat, fabulous. However, you need to inference. You have to process this data where it's created. So that's called AI inferencing, and that is running on edge devices that are deployed in gas station, convenience store, hospital, clinics, whatever you want. It's really where the data is created. And why? Simply because there's a vast amount of data being generated right now with these video inputs. The cameras that are deployed in a convenience store are recording, as an example, are recording 24/7. It's a vast amount of data that is actually too much to being uploaded to the cloud. And the device that we typically find at the edge or in this gas station, as an example, is typically not powerful enough to process this video input. So this is why we have created ThinkEdge or an edge computing devices that is able to process and run these large language model to recognize, well, there's a cat crossing or this is a banana or whatever it is, right? And we'll talk about some of the use cases that are insightful for the customers to optimize their operation, reduce their shrinkage, or improve staff and personnel security and these sort of things, right? But that's really, in essence, the most important aspect that happens is how do we bring the compute capability from the cloud closer to where the data is created.
Yeah, and just to capitalize on that a little bit, Sean. I mean, that's exactly what I mean. That's the whole effort. Everything is moving to more localized compute. Like as Charles said, the edge compute capabilities reacting in real time, and then the same translates into the AI PCs, the laptops, notebooks, having or desktops happening in real time and interacting with and responding to the data at the edge versus having to rely upon going back into the cloud.
Okay, thanks for that. Charles, I just wanted to follow up a little bit. So,
Mhm.
in some ways, this reminds me of like the next generation of the IoT.
Right?
And also, I think I know what you're referring to. I mean, computer vision and maybe industrial applications and
Yeah.
sensors that are now infused with Gen AI. I mean, is that kind of what you're talking about? All these industrial, uh, maybe supply chain applications, security applications. Can you talk
Yeah.
about a few of those applications? Yeah.
So these are Gen AI or AI in general, as you mentioned. But I can give you an example of a manufacturing plant that you've mentioned, where there's perhaps a heavy machinery operating, and it's dangerous to have a human next to that machine when it's operating. Well, we can, with the cameras already in place that are already generating data, by introducing edge computing in that factory. Right now, we're in that location. We're able to analyze the video input, and if a human is coming too close to a machinery that is operating in real time, we'll raise an alarm, we'll have a bell ringing or something to notice that there's a danger happening there. We also have use cases where customers in manufacturing are recycling metal, right? And then the big conveyor belt brings debris of metal into a big tank that melts everything, and recycled metal comes out of it, right? Well, some of the people are trying to recycle a barbecue propane bottle. Well, that can be a problem if you try to melt this. It can create an explosion and endanger people and damage a material. So rather than having somebody looking at a conveyor belt 24/7 trying to find a propane bottle, we trained the model in the cloud to recognize a barbecue propane bottle under every angle, and now run that model AI at the edge on a Lenovo Edge servers directly at the factory, looking with a camera at that conveyor belt and being able with a high level of accuracy, recognizing that bottle any time of day under every single possible angle. So that's a clear example on how in manufacturing, for example, we're able to improve safety or operation of the enterprise.
That's pretty amazing. Okay, so I'm going to go on to another issue now. So in March,
Okay.
Lenovo introduced a new hybrid product with NVIDIA, which I think is one of your bigger partners in AI. Correct me if I'm wrong. Can you
No, you're
can
correct.
you clarify exactly what Lenovo means exactly by hybrid, and also talk a little bit about what these hybrid tools and products are, and then after that, maybe talk about how the partnership with NVIDIA works.
Okay, so indeed, NVIDIA, so as AMD and Intel are key partners to our strategy here. However, we did announce at NVIDIA GTC two new large servers, if you want, to be put in the data center that are eight-way GPUs that are basically very powerful computer that will compute and learn and train the systems that we just talked about, right? So these are running in the data center, and we announced two of these new systems at NVIDIA GTC earlier this year. Now, the hybrid model refers to the fact that, well, some of the workloads will be running and learning in the data center, but as you can imagine in the example I gave you, some of these models will run on the customer enterprise. And this is where privacy comes into play. This is where responsible AI comes into play. This is where privacy and compliances with different regulation comes into play. So Lenovo's services and Lenovo's technology expertise in that field brings to the enterprise customers the ability to onboard an AI journey or Gen AI journey by doing some of the learning in the cloud while having on their premise, on their customer premise, the ability to run and get the benefit of that generative AI running locally in the security and confinement of their own firewall, for example.
Okay, so none of this stuff runs on public cloud. It's all either.
You can run everything on the public cloud, but as Tom alluded earlier, there's some privacies that want to be respected. You can run everything in the public cloud. However, for latency, for infrastructure or security concerns, some customers prefer to have the inferencing of what's happening in my premise remain within the four walls, if so to speak, of that
So
enterprise.
for consumer applications, though, does
Yeah.
the Edge AI will run on public cloud or still on maybe Lenovo private cloud or your data centers or?
Lenovo will not offer or does not offer as a service AI, right? So it will be something. It will so for enterprise application, they will either have go to their cloud provider. We will enable these cloud provider with the technology. We will enable the enterprise with the technology, but it's not a Lenovo cloud itself that will provide that functionality.
Okay, so thanks. So you mentioned that you're working with AMD and Intel as well. So are those your exclusive edge chip providers? And when regarding bringing
Hmm.
your vision of AI for all and AI PCs and AI smartphones to fruition?
Edge chip provider might be a broad term here, right? As far as CPU, we work with AMD, we work with Intel. As far as GPU, we work with NVIDIA, we work with AMD, we work with Intel. We work as well with Qualcomm. I should mention as well on the Edge Think Edge portfolio, we do have an NVIDIA type technology that is running as a CPU as well with our SC70. And then basically that ecosystem really is accelerating and moving extremely fast, right? And the role that Lenovo plays into that environment is how to bring these technology to the market for enterprise customers to run AI without having that full complexity. So we publish some reference architecture and some design guidelines that is easier for customers to implement. But we also put a lot of focus around power consumption because one of the drawback of these technology is that they draw a lot of energy and power to enable them. So how do we cool down these systems? How do we minimize the power consumption is really the core of our engineering right nowadays. And how do we bring efficiently these systems to market? And we have designed a couple of systems using air cooling technology, for example. But more and more, we're realizing that liquid cooling is better equipped to remove the heat out of a system, right? So 95% of the heat can be removed when using some sort of a water cooling. Where now we have been in the past 10 years developing liquid cooled system in HPC environment and high performance computing. And now we're adapting and extending that expertise towards AI systems so that we're able to run water system cool inside a Gen AI structure and reduce 40% the energy consumption of those systems. That's really essential because that can easily get out of control, Sean.
So
The
you're
power
clearly
consumption.
talking about this cooling process in the data centers, right?
In this context, I was, yes.
Okay, because we don't need cooling for edge devices themselves.
Well, we need cooling, but it's typically air cooled system, right? We'll have ventilator, and then the name of the game in that context, Sean, and this is really interesting because we spend an insane amount of engineering on the acoustic of the edge system, and this is really important because when you bring, as I said, a data center type device into an environment which is a shopping a store, for example, where humans are around it, you last thing they want to hear is an 80 decibel server spinning in the background, right? Because they have to cool down the GPUs. So we spend at Lenovo a lot of engineering on how do we cool the system, on the airflow and the fluid dynamic of the system so that we can operate a GPU and at full capacity below 50 decibel. These are sort of the benchmark that we set so that we can have AI running in an environment where humans are around, having a normal conversation, office level type conversation level of noise, without having a AI server in the corner screaming 80 decibel of a high pitched tone trying to cool down the system. So we still use, at the edge, we still use air, but we worked hard and very, we had a lot of engineering effort to design the system with different material, different airflow model, different technology to cool down the system without having the fans generating a lot of noise.
So the PCs are still using fans, right?
Yes. Yes. As you think about that, again, that end-to-end continuum, the beauty of it is Charles and I can both monitor what's happening in the data center, like you mentioned, the high performance computing group using liquid cooled, and then looking at thermal technologies and thermal dynamics as we cascade down. Now, obviously, I can't put a liquid cooled into a very thin and light laptop solution, so it's air cooled. But we do a lot of thermal engineering around fan design, use of materials, vapor chambers around the high heat areas generated by CPU, GPU, now the NPU devices. So we're able to really benefit from that end-to-end view as we look at the thermal uh, dynamics across the portfolio.
Okay, so now might be a good time to interject a question about NPUs and what they are, what they do, and how are do they represent an advance in kind of AI chip technology, and also do they cause laptops and PCs to get hotter than the previous generations of PCs?
Yeah, so great question. So in its essence, the neural processing unit (NPU) is, again, as I talked about earlier, think of it as a third engine on board, a third compute. It's part of the SoC or adjacent to the CPU within the system on a chip. So it's not going to be yet a third element added, like an M.2 card sitting aside. So it'll be inside or is inside the SoC. When we talk about heat generated, the benefit of it is running at a much lower power state. And so think of it as a smaller, lower performant engine versus the CPU and certainly the GPU, but it's designed for a continuous workload. So a very easy or digestible example would be background blur if you're on a video call. So historically, that would be handled by CPU, which is going to run at a higher thermal envelope than the NPU. And when we jumped into work from home, as the world had to go work from home, the engines weren't there. We did not have NPU on board, and we were all having to jump on video calls. And we noticed our laptops were running hotter. Fans were spinning all the time because the engines and the capability just wasn't there. So now we have presence of NPU. We offload some of these continuous workloads that can operate on a lower powered engine, so it uses less power. So you ask about thermal, it actually helps mitigate some of that thermal by offloading. And then now you start thinking about the workload. So if I want that fast response, fast call, fast returns, that's a CPU. If I want more of a content creation, a graphic, an image creation, video production, that's GPU. If I want some of these continuous lower power state workloads, that's NPU. So you have choices. And as I talked about, just software vendors are now looking at elements of their code and the outcomes you're trying to drive to, and they're starting to write the code or the routines to call upon these different engines. And that's only going to become more and more intelligent over time. So our big benefit is, immediately we're seeing better battery life result, or lower power consumption, lower thermal, therefore better battery life out of the gate, and it's only going to improve. The second piece I'll talk about with the NPU. So now let's go dive a little bit more into the tracking or knowing you, learning you, letting this. I use the term the PC truly becomes personal for the first time, because we've talked about personal compute, but it's not really a personal. It's just personal because of the files and the applications we run. Now the device will have the capability of actually tracking your behaviors and learning how you respond, what information you're looking at, and creating basically that persona, you as the persona. So as I start new documents, or if I ask for summarizations, or if I ask for history of what I've been looking at and aggregate that, it will be a different result for each of us on this discussion. So Charles's laptop will be different, Sean, your laptop will be different, mine will be different. It'll be tailored to us, and that's where that NPU is really needed to run that, again, a continuous, effectively monitoring or tracking of us so it can learn us. So that's really the biggest value prop as we go forward in time.
That is really cool. I will say that reminds me of in the software world of the digital assistant.
Yes.
That we would all have, and also perhaps we'll all one day have our own LLMs that we trained on
Yes.
us.
Yes.
I mean, so now you have your laptop. And by the way, I did check my laptop and see how hot it was getting because it runs my monitor and different things like that too. So, but as far as like working on the product and portfolio management side, how long does Lenovo take to decide if a product is doing what it's supposed to do and serves the purpose it wants to serve? So you guys have jumped like full on into the AI at the edge and AI PCs, and maybe that's a whole new horizon. So what other things do you have going on, and how do you prioritize?
Yeah. So just to look at sort of the long-term projection. So when we think about in terms of roadmap, we are projecting 2 to 3 years out. So I've already, as an example, so we're sitting here in 2024. We've already locked in on the 2025 portfolio. I mean, of course, we'll course correct and make minor changes, but it's locked. I'm looking at 2026, 2027. So I always have this, it's a love hate because I know what's coming and I can't talk about it yet, but I can tell you, you're hearing me sort of project what's coming a little bit at a high level because I can see what's coming. It's super exciting. I don't have the perfect crystal ball, but one thing that Charles and I do a lot is talk with and engage with customers. So we're constantly looking at the customer outcomes, the what challenges our customers are facing and what they're trying to drive to. And so we think about it sort of in three buckets. There's a productivity bucket that AI can deliver. There's a transformation. How can companies transform their business? And then there's operational efficiency. How can I drive things more efficiently, faster? The productivity side, it's not only how does the company drive more productivity, but how does the individual drive more productivity? Because when you look at sort of in the future, we know we are going to drive more outcomes across those vectors. But now, to specifically answer your question, how long does it take? We generally it will be 18 to 24 months is the sort of the start to finish. Basically, I'm looking 18 to 24 months out, and then as we fast forward, I'm launching those next generation solutions and platforms. So there's a constant 2 to 3 year horizon that I'm looking at for what's coming next, if that makes sense.
And Sean, maybe if I can add a little bit to
Sure.
Tom. We're looking at 2 to 3 years ahead, of course, but sometimes the technology that will be on the phone, on a smartphone, on the laptop, on the edge, or on the data center can feed each other, and that's probably one of the biggest advantage of Lenovo as an engineering powerhouse. From pocket to cloud, we make smartphones, we make laptops, we make edge devices and servers. And some of when we're looking at the edge portfolio, the AI edge portfolio, a lot of the technology on cooling and heat dissipation and all that came from the laptop division. When we have these edge servers mounted in a warehouse, as I've mentioned, or a factory, there's often not an Ethernet port next to it. So we need to have this heavy ruggedized equipment being able to communicate over Wi-Fi. So we have the best engineering in over wireless technology in our mobile division, right? So it's a combination of that different engineering that brings Lenovo's value into all of our product by leveraging the expertise and know-how of these different groups that can come up with these products today. and looking at technologies that each one of these groups are sharing or looking ahead for in the future, and share that common engineering know-how across the different group, basically. So that's really something that is unique, because from the phone to the laptop to the data to the edge device to the data center, big servers, Lenovo is unique in that perspective.
Okay, forgive me for my lack of knowledge
Yep.
about this, but your smartphones, are they always branded Lenovo, or do other
Ah,
brands on them? And are they sold all over the world, or mostly in the US, mostly in Asia, mostly in Europe?
that's a good question. I should say they are branded Motorola. So Motorola phone is actually the fastest growing OEM, very leading market in Latin America, growing fastest growing in US. So absolutely, the Motorola brand was is the one that
You
we're
bought
going to market.
You bought Motorola, correct?
Lenovo did,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. And so Africa too, just out of curiosity, are you operating, does Motorola operate in, sell in Africa as well, like South America?
South America, definitely. Africa as well, yes.
That's really interesting. Okay, so all right.
All over the world. I would say I don't have the full list here, but it's we operate overall. Lenovo operates in 180 market, and Motorola definitely is part of these major markets.
And
Absolutely.
say, and it's okay. Could both of you guys touch a little bit on how much software is part of Lenovo? Like, you have software engineers. Do you have a software division? Does it is it integrated with your hardware divisions? And or do you rely on third parties like NVIDIA, or both?
Uh, I, Tom, I'll go first, perhaps, and definitely we do have a software division. We do have for a couple of reasons. First of all, we rely on partners, yes, and we bring some value on the software itself. So how do we manage the equipment? How do we manage this at scale? So it's one thing to managing one server, it's another thing to managing 10,000 server, and it's a different thing to manage 10,000 servers in 10,000 locations, right? So how do you deploy, manage, and run this infrastructure? Is a software that is developed within Lenovo, absolutely. Then when we're looking at some of these, how do we identify a barbecue propane bottle, that example, or how do we count people coming in and out of a store, or how do we identify shoplifter? These are software that are coming from third party, like third party ISVs will come in as part of our ecosystem. Actually, Lenovo invested over 1.2 billion in an AI ecosystem over the last 4 years, and we committed to another billion to enhance that ecosystem, right? So these are fundamental part of how do we go to market. And then, as you've mentioned, NVIDIA and all that, the chip manufacturer or the silicon manufacturer that we work with, each one of them provide a set of software and functionality that we build upon to create our products, basically.
Yeah, same. And again, it extrapolates across. So the management, orchestration, security, we do a lot of the development on our devices because we own the devices. We know that we got the intelligence of managing these devices. So we develop tools that are delivered with our products. But then there's the orchestration and the management layer that we partner certainly, but we also have our own solutions. Lenovo Device Intelligence is a platform that we offer our enterprise customers for the management, patching, predictive analytics of our platforms as well. But as Charles says, we have now it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar investment on this program called AI Innovators that allows us to onboard the ecosystem of partners, and we're effectively monitoring end to end, again from that cloud to pocket, software partners that add value along this continuum and really around the orchestration, management, security of AI. So we're rapidly, it's like a continuous onboarding of different software partners through that vehicle.
Oh, that's really interesting. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about trust and safety and reliability as we wind down. But I wanted to ask you, slip this question in. What are some of the biggest challenges you guys are seeing in these new emerging markets? Is it getting the stuff to work all the time? Is it our technical implementation? Is it distribution? Is it education,
Yeah.
enterprise customers and consumer customers?
I can maybe start for Edge AI. As we see, the biggest challenge is probably the first one is probably the scalability, right? Is one thing to make a decision. Hey, we're going to try this in our lab. It works. We're going to have 10 pilot sites. Fantastic. Now we deploy this in 8,000 locations across 14 countries. There lies the challenge. This is why the software that I referred earlier is essential to the success and scalability of that type of technology, right? Without that, it's a manual work that takes months and weeks and months and years, and it's a never-ending task. So that how to automate the infrastructure as a code and deploy this and manage this at scale is essential. The second topic is really the security aspect. So we have built data centers with fence, with guards, with biometric doors to open them and all of that. And now we're taking that same compute and we're putting it into a high-end luxury store in the office of the manager. Fine. That is, I'm sure the door is locked, but how do you protect the device? How do you protect the data? So this is where we have innovated and put some technology in the product itself that will detect movement, that will encrypt the data, that will delete the data in case of an intrusion, and if somebody opens up the server. So how all of these devices has all of these challenges are unique to edge computing because of the location where they're operating and how we have to secure that. So I would say that the challenges have been deploying this at scale, and this is what we're addressing with the automation software of Lenovo Open Cloud Automation. And how do we secure the device and the data so there's no security breach or any compromise of our customers' integrity simply because it's sitting in a not as secure type of environment.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And then just to layer on top of that. So as we look at the AI PC, the biggest challenge is it's just starting. And so we're sort of in this rapid trial, beta, pilot. The companies are trying to figure out what they want to do and how they want to use these more intelligent devices at the edge, but they don't know yet what they can actually accomplish. So we are coming to them with of course, our expertise as trusted advisors, having spent many years in the data center. We're now where we see the biggest opportunities for our customers right now is they're taking a lot of their proprietary data or their IP and building models on those to determine how they can drive more productivity. So what's happening actively in our customers right now is they're taking our high performance workstation devices and out equipping their data scientists with running models, training models against those in uh, this development phase before they start piloting and trialing out on the AI PC. Because in the end, you're going to have data, you're going to have these model creation and you're going to have model consumption. And so the model creation is what's actively happening right now because we moved from cloud to edge. Now we're getting ready to deploy AI PC. So that's what's actively occurring right now. And we've got tailor-made workstations developed for data scientists to do exactly that, those workloads. And then of course we bring our specialists in to help our customers scale as they get ready and are preparing to launch these AI PCs into their end users' hands.
Okay, so one quick follow up on that, and then maybe after that, my last question, and plus anything you guys want to add. But the are you selling the AI PCs now?
Yes.
And you
Yeah, yeah,
started already
100%. So
selling? Yeah.
we started, we've got, we talked a little bit about silicon providers earlier, but when we look at our fleet of laptops across Intel, AMD, Qualcomm in market today, all of these devices have now been introduced with the NPU and the AI PC capability. And we've got, quite a few upcoming announcements of next gen platforms coming into market the second half of this year. But you'll see, already if you go look at our devices that we launched this past year and in the front half of this year, these are AI PCs.
Okay, thanks. So, Charles, you touched a lot on security, but what about the larger problem with LLMs and generative AI itself? Trust, reliability, safety, not being biased.
Yeah.
How does Lenovo deal with all of those challenges in ensuring accuracy and safety of LLMs on edge and devices and AI PCs?
So Lenovo itself has internally a diversity and ethic board of AI. So we do have a committee formed internally of various members that look when we're looking at some of these third-party vendors or technology to onboard within our ecosystem, we will analyze and look at the different security, privacy, and ethic, or there's no bias or anything like that. We also joined the UNESCO Committee for Responsible AI earlier this year as one of the members, and we're following and adhering to these highest standard of compliancy because, as you've mentioned, AI can be used for good or not so good, and this is where we want to make sure that the technology and the ecosystem that we build for our products is meeting these highest ethical and responsible AI principle.
Okay, thanks for that. I did say I wasn't going to talk about LLMs, which ones are better, but which ones do you guys have your own LLM that you've created based on a foundation model from someone else, or you fine tuned your models, or do you use third party models and have a multi model approach?
Yeah, I'm not I can address that question dead on. We do not have our own LLM. Basically, we love them all, and we work with all of them. I wouldn't be able to tell you which one is better. I'm sure there's some differentiation between one and the others, but the technology that we develop is agnostic of these model and take it and runs them as per the customer asks for, which one of their build preference.
Yeah, I think we're starting to call that a multi-model strategy or
Exactly.
open
Yeah.
model strategy. That would be correct too.
Yeah.
All right. So anything else you guys want to add? You guys were two great guests. I mean, great interviewees. Thank you so much. So anything else you want to add or?
No, I think from my side, I think you've captured it. I just think if there's one thing that your listening, your audience, listeners walk away from is this is this wave that has started. We're at the beginning of this wave. So there's a lot of times I'm talking with customers. They're anxious about am I missing? Am I missing out? Am I losing in this race? The race is just starting. So it's I would say part of this is patiently move through this, and Lenovo again with this end-to-end ownership, we can help you along the way because we've got expertise across the entire continuum of compute from data center all the way to your phone in your pocket, so we can help you. But I would just caution on it's not going to happen tomorrow, it's not going to happen next week, it's going to happen over these next several months and years, and so we have time as we move through this wave.
Okay, well, thank you, Tom and Charles. I mean, you were amazing guests. Again, to listen to this podcast, just go to TechTarget News, and it'll be out next few weeks, surely within the next 2 months. And I really appreciate your time and be on the Targeting AI podcast.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks so much.